Hello everyone, this is Mahojo. This video is about a bit of a hot button issue that's going on right now. Something that's affecting a few people that I know, kind of a recent social thing. This is happening in the UK, America and the West in general. There's a lot of people arguing about whether the identity of transgender people is valid. I think this is a pretty obvious issue. I think a pretty basic understanding of like culture and language should deliver you to the conclusion that their identities are valid. But I just like to give my argument, my opinion on why that is the case. Because it does annoy me a little bit. I know a couple of trans people, and they especially recently, it's almost like a trend, almost like a craze. They've gone through a bit of those birds are really loud. They've gone through a bit of people doubting them and all that. So I just want to kind of like try and put my bit out there and say why I think it's valid. So a lot of things that people will say, if they don't believe that it's possible for someone who is says at birth they're a woman, or says at birth they're a man, they don't think it's possible for them to be a gender opposite of that, is because they will keep saying that it's a biological issue. You can't change biology. They'll be quite smug about basic biology, chromosomes, penis, all that, whatever. But the thing is, this completely misses the point, completely misses the issue. It is not a biological issue, absolutely not. It's not an issue of biology. And the thing is, because these people who will say this, and a lot of times you'll see it on online, sad people, is this implies, if you think it's purely a biological issue, whether someone is considered a man or a woman, then you have to ignore every single social situation in which someone refers to gender, refers to being a man or a woman, outside of it literally explicitly being about biology. So when you see someone walking on the street, you might think they're a woman or a man, but you don't have X-ray vision to look at their chromosomes and say, oh, biologically. So what are you actually basing that off? You're basing that off of how they look, which, yes, obviously that is affected to a certain extent by their biology, but it's also, especially if you're looking at a long distance, it's affected by things like their clothes, their mannerisms, their hair and all that. Bloody hell, these birds are something else. Hopefully it doesn't fuck up the audio too much. Try and go somewhere else. They're sent by the transphobes. It's a conspiracy by J.K. Rowling to shut down this video. Oh, and it's going dark as well. She's blocking out the sun. She's using magic to block out the sun. Trying to sabotage my video. It won't happen, J.K. To pretend that gender as like a social thing separate from sex doesn't exist, and to pretend that being a man or a woman is all about sex, is just to ignore every single instance, every single joke about the difference between men and women, every time someone makes a comment about men, every time someone makes a comment about women, every time a product is targeted at men or targeted at women, every time someone discusses or references or acts like, or just in any way at all interacts with the idea of being a man or being a woman, where it's not literally strictly about their biology, which is 99.9999% of times that happens in reality, then you have to just ignore that all. You have to just ignore reality all around you. Okay, if you want to stick to that, if you want to say that it's all about biology, then I will challenge you. Genuinely, if you're watching this and you think I'm wrong, I give you a little challenge. Try not to mention or imply anything or in any way reference being a man or being a woman or anything masculine or anything to do with femininity, except when it is literally directly related to their biology. Doesn't happen. Because that's not how society works. The vast majority of our entire interaction with this subject in society is social, is cultural. It's not a biological issue. You're entirely sidestepping the point. And I think this is an intentional sidestep. It's a linguistic issue and it's a social issue. And here's why I think I've not on purpose. People just do this because that's what people's brains are like, or in some cases people do this intentionally and maliciously. The reason I believe why is that if you are making the argument that someone is just objectively say someone says I'm a man, they were born a woman, like they were assigned female at birth, and now they identify as a man. If you want to argue against that, it's much more easy morally for you to just say, okay, I'm sorry, it's not my fault, I have no stake in this, but you are just objectively, empirically, observably not a man. Because then you can kind of wipe your hands of the subject. You can wash your hands and say, no, it's not me. I don't have a stake in this. I'm just pointing out reality. I'm just pointing out the facts. It's not my fault. I don't dislike you. I don't have anything against you, but I'm just pointing out reality. That's what you can do if you make the biological argument, you make it a biological issue. But once you realize that's bullshit and you get past that, it becomes much harder to try and reject someone's gender identity. Because then when you get to the point where it's a linguistic issue, a cultural issue of whether you ought, whether you should describe someone as that, whether you should, in a socially practical sense, consider that person to be their chosen identity, well, chosen, suddenly you have to actually take a moral stance. And instead of saying, I just objective, it's just the facts, it's just not true. You have to say, I believe you shouldn't be allowed to be a man. I believe you shouldn't be allowed to say you're a woman. Then you have to actually commit, and you have to put yourself on the line ethically a little bit and actually commit to looking someone in the eye and saying why you don't think they should be allowed to identify the way they are. That's much harder to defend. So that's why I believe a lot of people who deny trans people's identities always try and make it a biological issue, even though that's transparently not the case. It's a linguistic issue because the thing about language is, it's not discovered, it's made. You don't dig up rocks in the ground, you don't mine and, dig and unearth a definition. Definitions do not exist in their own empirical sense. All language is collections of sounds that we ascribe meaning to suit our purposes, that we collectively give meaning to in order to pass around information to suit whatever we want to do collectively as a society. That's one of the reasons why definitions change. So, that's the only thing you need to consider, is what is the social utility of defining this word a certain way, letting people say this certain thing. That's all you need to think of. What is the social utility? That's how language works. There is no objective, empirical, that is absolutely what the definition of this word is, or this phrase, and it always will be. It's always an issue of ought, not what it is, what it ought to be. So again, if you're gonna say that transgender people, their identities are invalid, it only makes sense for you to argue that from the perspective of why you think they shouldn't, morally, they shouldn't be allowed to do that. And trying to do it otherwise is just cowardly, which, I think reveals a lot. So now we've concluded that it's a linguistic and social issue of what people ought to be defined as and what people ought to be able to allow to identify as. Then here's the thing, what is the actual social utility that is lost by not allowing a transgender person to identify as their chosen gender? What social harm is caused by that? What? Like, really, tell me. I can't think of anything, really. I can't think of any amount of social harm that would be caused by that which overrides the social benefit of letting people identify as that. I wish I could go into this more, but what's the harm? Where is it? There is no harm. Why can't, why? It's just, that's the thing, it just becomes a little bit pathetic. Why can't they call themselves that? Why can't that be considered the case? Because again, it's a moral issue. I'd like to go into more, objective, empirical things, but that's the thing, it's not an issue of what is and what isn't. It's you know, why don't you want it to be that way? What's the problem? So, and then if you really push people on that, I believe that they'll just come up with a lot of hot air and they won't really be able to answer it. I do wish for some responses in the comments or whatever. Hopefully I'll get a few and I'll get to see some perspectives. And hopefully I might change a couple of people's minds. I mean, it is the internet, so I haven't got high hopes, but hopefully, you know, just I'll be able to affect a couple of people. So yeah. So I'm gonna try and, if I ever see anyone on Twitter, because I'm on Twitter sometimes, see a lot of transphobes on Twitter. I might link them this video, see what they have to say about it. Because, yeah, it is a bit annoying, because it seems like it's just some sort of craze. Like this year and last year, there was a big sort of surge of transphobia, people rejecting identities. I don't know if it's become more common, and it's kind of a backlash to that. It's a reaction to an increasing number of people identifying as transgender. But yeah, it's not good. So I just want to put my opinion out there, and just put it into the void, and hopefully, you know, one or two people will be affected. So yeah. Alright, thanks for watching if you did. I'll see you in a bit, hopefully. Bye bye.